G'day, it's Oscar, and this is subscriber-only content. Thank you for subscribing. As a thank you for your commitment and taking that extra step and selecting subscribe, as well as based on our audience survey and research, I'm listening to you. This is called Answer My Questions. If you have a question on listening in the workplace that you would love to have answered, email podcast@oscartrimboli.com. That's podcast@oscartrimboli.com. This question from Jorge, he says it relates to professional and personal. If you professionally work with a senior leader who you consider to be a poor listener, how best do you give them the feedback so they can lead to their own change? When I speak on stage, well, in those days where there were stages and there were events and things like that, the most common thing, people will come up to me off stage or as I walk out of the room or something like that, they would always say, look, I'm a really good listener, but my boss, my direct report, my life partner, my kids, they're really poor listeners. What advice should I give them? And I always say the same thing, give them no advice whatsoever. Just be a great role model for listening for them. Show them what great listening looks like because they might not know. The likelihood you are going to change an adult in a behavior that you don't fully understand the context behind in a simple conversation like this one, because listening is behavioral, is near zero. I can't give you a really simple prescription to go to your boss and say, hey, boss, you're not listening to me. As opposed to quite often the boss is on a cell phone. They might be on a computer. They might be completely distracted. Jorge, the number one tip I would give you is this. If they're a poor listener because they're distracted, just do this. Just wait for them and their eyes will come to yours. And then ask them the question, is now still a good time for this conversation? And in some cases, they'll say no. So I had a situation where that had happened to me with a leader I was working with, and she looked up at me and says, no, I've just got a text message from my son that my mother-in-law has fallen and she's been taken into hospital. We need to reschedule this meeting. Now, I could have been going through a lot of judgment while she was on her cell phone trying to figure out whatever was going on via text message and trying to be discreet. But I just asked the simple, I paused, waited for her eyes to come to contact with mine and waited. And when she did, offered that. Now, sometimes they'll go, oh, no, sorry, I just got distracted. Off you go. But just give them the benefit of the doubt if you're saying that distraction is what you're correlating to the inability of the senior leader to listen. That moment where you can use pause rather than feeling like you need to fill the space with words sends a really strong listening signal to them. It's almost like a magnet that draws them back to the conversation. If you can pause, and it's going to be really hard, all of a sudden you're going to attract the attention of your senior leader back to you straight away. What's your question? I'd love to know. Let me know. Send me an email, podcast@oscartrimboli.com. That's podcast@oscartrimboli.com for any questions you have on listening in the workplace. Thanks for listening.